All right, what is up, you guys, and welcome back in. We got One Piece chapter 1128 brief spoilers. My name is Sai, and we're gonna hop into this and talk about these spoilers as if you have already read them already. If not, I'll link them down below in the comment section, so feel free to check them out there. But yes, let's hop right into it. So, first thing we learn in this chapter is that the Strawhats, they might still be on Elbaf, but this isn't exactly the Elbaf-Warland that we know. They're actually inside of a giant toy box. That is right, guys. They're inside a playhouse that belongs to the Sun God. Yeah, things are getting crazy. You know, coming off of last week's chapter, I was like, okay, Big Stein Castle. That seems like a giant's playhouse. My scope, my mindset was small. You know, I put myself in a little cubby there because it turns out that everything we saw last chapter was actually a toy box. You know, forget Big Stein Castle, the villages, the trees, the Idrasil tree that we saw exists within a toy box that belongs to a giant. Like, yo, even the people we saw last chapter who I believe to be giants turns out to be just regular sized humans. You know, I saw theories saying that these guys are dwarves, maybe they're half giants, and maybe they're just smaller. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But I didn't stop and say, wow, I think these are humans, guys. No, that's crazy. But yeah, it turns out they're just regular humans like the Straw Hats who are trapped inside the Sun God's playhouse. So the Straw Hats, they realize all of this and they end up smashing through a wall to escape. And outside of the wall, outside of the toy box, is Chopper. All right. So what's going on here? Why is Chopper so dang special? Is it because he can talk to animals? Is it because of his devil fruit? Is it because he's a deer? We don't know. It could even be all three, to be honest. But Chopper here is getting special attention. And what makes it interesting is that when the Sun God bursts into the room and he realizes that the Straw Hats are escaping, the guy has a deer skull for a head. Well, not for a head, he's wearing it on top of his head, I believe. But yeah, there is a chance that maybe he sees a kindred spirit in Chopper. Maybe he saw Chopper and he wanted to, like, cut his head off and wear his skull on his body somewhere. I don't know what's going on with this guy. You know, typically when I thought of the Sun God, I was thinking about somebody who would look like the sun, or maybe even Sun God Nika, right? I was thinking like white hair, kind of flowy, kind of crazy, kind of wacky. But no, the guy walks in with a completely different aura than what I expected. Yeah, he walks in with the deer skull, and then he ends up chasing the Straw Hats at the end of the chapter. And the Straw Hats, you know, they got Chopper, they're escaping, and they also have the cat from last chapter as well. The cat lion that we saw them beat up has seemingly allied with the Straw Hats, which is a funny running thematic that is present on every island, right? Just thinking back to Wano, we had Komachio, Tama's dog, lion thing, and then in Dressrosa, we had the bull, and just thinking back to Fishman Island, we had the Kraken. Like, the Straw Hats just can't help themselves when it comes to befriending animals. And if anything, I think the cat is working with the Straw Hats because they didn't eat him, right? Last chapter, Luffy was like, hey, I'm still full from the ear god. We don't have to eat this guy. You know, we'll let the cat slide today. The cat was probably just super thankful, and obviously it can't really fight back. We took the cat hostage. So yeah, we end off the chapter with the Straw Hats fleeing the scene. And I gotta say this, I still don't know 100% if this Sun God we see this chapter is a bad guy. You know, according to the brief spoilers, the guy, he isn't like attacking, he isn't, you know, throwing anything at them. So I don't know what the context is. Like, for all we know, the Sun God is chasing them, but he also wants to explain himself. Or maybe he's chasing them so that he can save them. I don't know. We've seen it a lot of times in anime. We've seen it a lot of times in One Piece, where there's always that, you know, miscommunication. So that still could be at play here. But I'm not 100% on that side, because the Sun God still has people held hostage in his toy house. You know, there are still skulls in Big Stein Castle that we saw last chapter with Nami and Usopp. So the Sun God isn't exactly benevolent. You know, he's trapping people in that toy box. He's putting wild animals in there. The animals are deadly. So, you know, there is a chance this guy is genuinely bad. But it's just hard to think of because, you know, obviously he's giving Chopper special treatment. The guy has the title of Sun God. It looked like the humans in the toy box wanted to call him for assistance to help with the forest fire that the Straw Hats started. So it's really odd. I don't know where to put this guy yet. And then as far as the deer skull goes, we do know that in Norse mythology, deer are revered. And in mythology, there's 4 deer, well, technically 5, that eat from the Yggdrasil tree. So, are there other, quote, gods out there? Is there going to be a rain god, a forest god, an earth god, like we heard back on Skypiea? Or is this the one-off sun god who's pretending to be, the sun god Nika of Elbaf? We're not exactly sure yet. Like, this chapter answered a lot of things, but it also gave us more questions. Like it's almost like we broke even in a way, right? Oda has a good way of doing that. And yeah, while we do know like what was happening last chapter now, we still have no idea what is going on in the grand scope of things. And also, according to the brief spoilers, we actually don't cut away as well. So we just have a full-on adventure here on our hands, which I do think is a lot of fun. Oh, speaking of last chapter though, people were talking about inconsistencies and mistakes, most notably with Luffy and his Gear 3rd and Gear 4th mix-up. They also talked about the sword turning into an axe and a bunch of weird things like, 1 minute Nami has her purse, the next minute she doesn't. Not Nami, I'm sorry, it's Usopp. He has a man purse. Usopp had a man purse 1 minute and then it's gone the next. And then there was Luffy who, talked about not wanting to eat the cat, which people thought was really odd because Luffy wouldn't pass up a chance at food. And then Luffy also didn't have the straw hat on his back like normal. So they're like, this has to be a fake Luffy, right? There's too many weird things about this. Turns out that's not the case. This is the real Luffy, and everything we saw last chapter were most likely mistakes made by the editing team last week, which is no big deal. Human error is a real thing. Entered a new arc. Some things are going to get a little bit wacky. It's no big deal in my opinion. So now, coming off of these spoilers, the one thing I'm kind of wondering about is if this sun god that we see this chapter knows that Luffy is sun god Nika. I feel like he should, right? The Elbaf people, they should get the news coups. They should get the bounty posters and realize that Luffy has white hair. He's bouncing up and down. He's the sun god. I mean, Dorian Brogy realized that he was a sun god simply by looking at the bounty poster. So there's no reason why this guy wouldn't know either. So did he purposefully trap the real sun god in the toy house to get rid of him? Or is this all a big misunderstanding? And then Yggdrasil. The Yggdrasil tree we saw. Like, is that a fake? Is that the real Yggdrasil? And it's just obviously like not that important? I don't know. With how much this island is mimicking, or this toy box is mimicking Elbaf or Warland, I think this could just be a replica Yggdrasil. I think that's what it is. That's kind of what makes sense to me, because the humans that are in the toy box, they're dressed like giants. They have the Norse outfits. So I do think that this is just a mock version of Elbaf, and that the Yggdrasil tree is real. It does exist, and it's much, much bigger than what we saw in the toy box. Another thing this kind of brings up too, since we're talking about the tree, is why would Yggdrasil catching on fire doom the country dash toy box? Because they said that last chapter. And, if this was the real Yggdrasil, it would make sense. But it's not the real Idrasil. It's simply a big fake tree in a toy box. So does that tree hold everything together? Or does the tree catching on fire mean that it'll spread all around and just engulf the toy box in flames? Because that could just be a possibility, right? Yeah, I think this is a lot of fun overall, though. I think this is a phenomenal chapter. Like I said, it's just a lot of good vibes here. And I quite honestly don't know what to expect next, right? Once the Straw Hats bust out of the sun god's house, what are we going to see outside? Are we going to see a bunch of other giants? Are we going to see more people with deer skulls? I don't know. Are we going to see the real Yggdrasil, right? Because there's got to be a big tree in Elbaf. We don't know what that is now. Now that Yggdrasil is just a thing in the toy box, is there a real Yggdrasil? Will that be the Atom Tree? Your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, like I said, this seems to be a pretty fun chapter if you enjoy the adventure. Personally, I'm loving it up. This does remind me of old school One Piece, We got the classic 6 characters running around, causing mayhem, and they're running from a deer-skulled giant by the end of it. It doesn't get more One Piece than this. One thing I'm kind of curious about is why the Straw Hats are running. Like, I kind of get it from a gag perspective, right? Like, you come home, you're the giant, and then you see, like, 6 people breaking out of your toy box with your cat. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny, right? It's pretty funny. But at the same time, it makes me wonder if there's something about this giant that makes it to where Luffy and the group don't want to fight him. Or maybe, they're just so caught up in fleeing the scene that they just want to run away anyways. But also, you know, we're friends with Dory, Brogy, Oimo, and Kashi, so I guess there is a chance that we just don't want to antagonize the giants here in Elbaf without knowing what the heck is going on. But one thing to make note of is that when the leakers describe the Deer Skull giant, they call him enormous, which I don't know if they're saying that because he's a giant or if it's because he's bigger than your average giant, because that's also a possibility. You know, when you think of a god type figure, usually they're larger than life. So the fact that this guy's called the Sun God in the Land of Giants, you know, it wouldn't be surprising if he is bigger than average. Another thing I'm kind of curious about is why didn't Shanks and or Vegapunk have to go through this toy box when they came to Elbaf? Maybe they did and we just didn't hear about their adventures here. But yeah, do all the tourists here on Elbaf get subjected to the same toy box treatment, or is this something that only the Strawhats here have to go through? And also, is this being sanctioned by the other giants like Loki, for example? Or is the Sun God here just a weirdo that just captures people on the side and nobody knows about it? Because Dory and Brogy didn't bring up this guy or this, you know, toy box freak. So there is a chance that this guy is like the Hody Jones or Vanderdecken of Elbaf, and he's just running a human farm on the side without anybody's knowledge. Now I'm just excited for the next chapter, right? When they open the giant door and leave this guy's house, what are we gonna see? You know, that's the big question. But hey, thank you guys so much for stopping by and checking out these spoilers with me. What do you guys think about the chapter? Do you enjoy it? Do you not like it? What do you think about the mistakes from last chapter? What the hell's going on with the cat lion? Like, can he still turn into a cat lion outside of the toy box? What's happening with the Idrasil? Why are people trapped in a toy box? And who the hell is the Sun God? And why is Chopper so damn special? I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions down below. My name is Sai, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.